Alright, hi. So this will be my unscripted explanation of Celeste Classic techniques, advanced tech, things like spike clips and spike jumps and all the weird jank you'll see if one watching the tasks. And hopefully this will be a precursor to the explanation of the any percent task, which I may or may not record today. But yeah, anyway, I'll get started, and I'll start by talking about spike clips, probably the most cool looking tech. And so there's a really nice setup for one in 300. And I'm using the task tool for this because it's convenient. If you want to know how to use this thing, Roundup Gaming made a really good tutorial on this, which you can find on his YouTube or pinned in the task channel of the Discord. Bam, right here. So you see him just kind of standing in the spikes. And if I play the task in the beginning, it looks pretty cool. But after a while, you'll notice, and this one lasts a pretty long time, I die. So spike clips are interesting because, similar to New Celeste, the 2018 one, spikes only kill you if you're moving, like, towards them. So for example, an upward-facing spike like these that I clip into will only kill you if you actually have downward speed. Same applies for sideways spikes, but it's the reason why this works. And so what happens is that, right, like here, the frame before I clip, if you look at the speed values right over here, I have minus 0.005 speed, Y speed. And negative speed is up, first of all, in peak of 8. And so that means that I have upward speed on this moment. So I'm actually, but it's only decimal speed. It's not like one speed, so it's not actually enough to make me move up. But it is upward speed, and that's important. So it means the spike still won't actually kill me. And so as you can see while I'm on the spike, oops, that's the Windows key, I still have upward speed on this frame. Just by being in the spike. And the reason for this, you think gravity might cancel out, is that gravity isn't actually applied when you're on the ground. When there's ground directly below you, I should say. So what's happening here is that basically I have a very tiny amount of upward speed, not enough to make me actually move up, but enough to not die to the spikes, because any negative speed is enough to not die to the spikes. But since it's not enough to move up, I'm able to land on the spikes. Interestingly, due to order, this requires you to have less than 1 speed to clip the spikes at any point in time, because within each frame, move X is called before move Y, just for technical details, which means that you actually have to be on the same height for 2 consecutive frames to get a spike clip. Well, you have to have upward speed during those 2 consecutive frames. As you can see here, it's actually 3 consecutive frames, 1, 2, 3. If I don't clip on the spikes, it's a bit more clear. 1, 2, 3. And then you start moving down. And that's enough to land in the spikes. And you would have also noticed that after a little while, I'll see if I can get it, then you just die to the spikes right there, yeah. And you can see I kind of pop up for like 1 frame before dying. And this is a marker of something called stability in a spike clip. So this is a really stable clip in the sense that it lasts a long time. I'm standing in the spikes for a while. I'll show another clip in a second that isn't nearly as stable. And that's because my speed is very low. So you'll see when I go back to the beginning of this clip that right here, I'm going to print out the thing again. You can see here, these are my subpixel values, or rem values. And my Y subpixels is 0.357, blah, 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 blah. And remember that positive means down. So subpixel values range between 0.5 and negative 0.5. And once your speed amounts enough that your subpixels increase, that's when you move. Your subpixel goes above or below 0.5 or minus 0.5. That's when you actually move. So as you can see, I'm continually printing out and advancing the frame, that the subpixels are slowly getting smaller and smaller due to my speed, my Y subpixels. If I continue this for a little bit into around 220 or so, the subpixels have gotten very, very small, very close to 0.5. And right here is actually the last frame of the clip, because as you can see, if I were to add my speed value to my subpixel, it would actually go below minus 0.5, which means it's enough to make me move upwards because negative speed is up. And this means that after this much time, I have finally moved up I now have a very low subpixel position, but 2 pixels above, because you always move 2 pixels or more every frame. I'll explain that in a little bit. Now that I've moved up, gravity is applied. As you can see, my Y speed is now 0.1, which is downwards. I fall into the spike and die. So that is a very stable clip, which is actually done on the lowest possible upward speed, the smallest possible upward speed you can have, 0.005, which is during a jump arc, or a wall jump arc, which as you can see is here. And so that's the stable spike clip. For an example of a less stable spike clip, I might choose 500, for example. This one is very commonly done in runs. Right about here, you updash. As you can see, I do clip the spikes, I'm standing on it right here, but my Y speed is negative 0.66, which is far higher up than 0.005. And as you can see, I immediately move up. Actually stay there for a couple frames before falling down and hitting the spikes and dying. In full speed, this will look like this. So this is an unstable clip, because what happens is that you have, well, many different upward speeds during the speed arc of a jump, lots of different upward speeds you can have, and it goes between a lot of values. The lowest upward speed is 0.005, but any speed below 1 can actually allow you to spike clip, because it'll allow you to stay at the same consecutive height for 2 frames with upward speed. So minus 0.66, what happens is that right here my subpixel is 0.41, which is fairly low, remember, because positive means down, and it goes between 0.5 and minus 0.5. So when negative 0.66 is added to it, it's minus 0.25, which is not enough to actually move you, which means that with upward speed and staying at the same height, you're able to land on the ground with upward speed, and therefore not die of the spike. However, the very next frame, the speed is actually enough to allow you to rise, and in fact, it's still enough to let you rise even more, and you actually gain 4 pixels from this. This is known as a boost, and it comes in very handy as you have grace jump frames, or coyote jump frames, during this time, so you can actually get a jump with a little bit of height increase, as you can see. And that's a less stable clip. You can actually clip, since you can clip with anything, any speed that is below 1, then the least stable clip you can get will occur on the speed of this one, this frame right here, negative 0.95 speed. And there are a couple setups for this. I can try to show one off now. I'm not sure exactly which levels. Here, I can show in this level. So right here, this is just a setup for demonstrating that clip. I will explain what else is going on here in a second. There we go. As you can see, I spike clip with negative 0.95 speed. This is the highest speed you could have while getting a spike clip, and it will give you the highest possible boost in the vanilla game, which is 6 pixels, or 3 frames of upward movement. As you can see, I just start falling again. So those are spike clips. Note that here, actually, especially as a good example, spike clips do not require a spike to be on the block, of course. They're more interesting when they do that, but without a spike on the block, they're generally called boosts, because as you can see, it can jump with that increased height. And it can be used for some pretty crazy stuff, including, as you can see here, like I can land on here with just a jump. Normally you can't jump that high. It looks like that. Boosts are especially useful off of spike clips in some levels, including 2300 gem skip, where the main RTA setup is to go over here, jump this way, and diagonal dash towards the block. Some people often wonder why you do this. The reason is because, well, you clip this block. As you can see here, I still have upward speed, minus 0.66. You're able to get 4 pixels of height from this. And that height will allow you, if you do it right, I don't know if I did it right, to get enough height to corner jump off of this block here. And I didn't get it, but I think you get the point. Boosts are very useful for many things. It's also used in chest skip, actually. This is a really cool example of a 6 pixel boost. Where you requires a pretty specific setup because the subpixels are very precise. I think it's here. Yes. Right about now. You can 6 pixel boost. And with 6 pixels, it's enough to skip the chest, barely. And I can wall jump up to the exit. So there's a boost and spike clips, which are actually really exactly the same thing. You'll see them a lot. And at their coolest, you can even combine them, like here, for example, in the 1600 any percent / task strat. You can see a spike clip here, but actually use it to get a boost, which is then used to go up here and do another interesting tech, the spike jump, where I will jump off of the spikes, and then get another spike clip because you can, and it saves a lot of time. So I'll just finish off this strat because it's freaking awesome. Yeah. So that's spike clips. Spike clips are very useful, very commonly found in lots of mods. There's a bunch of really common setups for it. One of the best common setups for it would be the 3-block clip, in which, for example, in 500, this will take a while. Very easy to demonstrate in this level. You can mess around with this yourself. Is to go over to this geometry right here. As you can see, I'm standing in a block, and 3 blocks above me are spikes. If I simply diagonal dash and hold left, then I will spike clip. And it's not super stable. You can get a bit more stable if you wait a little bit longer. But yeah, that's a pretty common setup. Another common setup for a spike clip that you'll see in vanilla, not really in many mods, is in 2900, where a down diagonal dash to the spring and just holding right sets you up perfectly to spike clip here. As you can see, I still have upward speed, minus 0.06, which is actually the lowest speed you can get off of a spring. It's the most stable clip off of a spring, I believe. And you can stay there for a pretty long time before boosting and dying. So that's spike clips. Put it here. The other tech I can think of is the cloud boost. Cloud boosts are an extension of the boost from spike clips that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to cut this into the recording around here. Frig. Alright, cloud boosts are another extension of the boosts that I mentioned before. You'll see them a lot in 700, especially. And what a cloud boost is basically a boost, just like the spike clips I mentioned before. However, they're far more easy to get on these clouds. And the reason is because you can go through a cloud, which means you don't actually need to stay at the same height for 2 frames to boost, which means you can theoretically cloud boost with any obtainable Y speed. So for example, if I start this game with level with the diagonal dash, I'll actually land on this cloud for 1 frame with massive upward speed, 1.5 compared to the below 1 speed I have to have before. And I boost a ton, I boost nearly a full block, and I can still jump. And then I can cloud boost here again, and jump from like here, and just make it like all the way over there. I can die to that spike, and it looks crazy. And so cloud boost is basically the same as a normal spike clip, where you are able to land on a block while moving up. However, with clouds, it's an interesting case because you can land on clouds much more easily. It's used in a couple of cloud boosts are used a lot in the just messing around in like minimum dash is 700, especially where they look really cool, where you're sort of able to just ride all the way to the top with this cloud. You still need to be at the right alignment though, so they're not just like free everything. One sec. There we go. Cloud boost here. Cloud boost here. And exit. Which in real time looks like this. It's pretty crazy. Cloud boosts are a really fun extension of the of the normal boosts, and they're very useful. They're used in a variety of levels, including 700 any percent, which you'll see a lot. It's just how you're able to just kind of rise, as well as in 1100 minimum dashes, where you're able to cloud boost off the spike. And if you watch the minimum dashes task, you'll be able to see it. Next tech will be spike jumps. Let's see, where does this come up? Probably 1800. So spike jumps are a really interesting looking thing, and they look really stupid. So you're just using a grace jump to set up for a specific height. Grace jumps are just coyote jumps. If you play Celeste, you know what they are. You can jump for a couple frames after leaving the ground, wall jump here, and I simply wall jump off of these spikes. It looks really crazy. I can show you again one more time. And it's just buffered. There's nothing really difficult, especially about the setup. And so the reason this happens is because there's a bit of a bug in the game, which is that left-facing spikes, which are these ones that I'm just wall jumping off of, actually have a hitbox that is only 2 pixels wide. And in the vanilla physics, you can actually wall jump off of any wall if it is 2 pixels or less away from you. So for example, if I'm going to wall jump off of this block here, Jesus, come on, X-Ram. If I want to wall jump off of this wall here, then as you can see, I'm 2 pixels away from it. My position is 96. My X position is 15 when I'm there, and when I'm aligned with it, it's 17, so I'm 2 pixels away from it. And I jump, I'm able to wall jump, as you can see, from 2 pixels away from the wall. This is just to add leniency, it's fully intended. But since the spike, left-facing spike hitbox is only 2 pixels wide, I can wall jump off of it. I can wall jump off of walls behind them, no problem. However, you'll also notice that through normal plays of the game with no setup, you will often die to left-facing spikes. Here's just another demonstration of the spike jump, where I can just kind of drift into it and wall jump off of it. You'll notice that lots of times with no setup, for example, these in 1700, these are left-facing spikes, you're not actually able to wall jump off it. As you can see, I'm pressing jump and I just die. And this is due to something called parity. This is one of the weirder aspects of this game, and it is due to a probably bug in the physics, which means that every time you would move on one frame, the amount that you move by has 1 added to it. This is known as move jank. So for example, right here I have 0 speed, 0 rem, 0 everything, and if I press to the right, then as you can see my X position is 16, I move to the right, it's 18. I moved by 2. And so what happens here is that I gain, on pressing right, I gain 0.6 X speed, which is enough to make me go above 0.5 X rem, which means I move, and I should only move 1 because I only went above 0.5 by like 1. 1. I only went above it once, I should say. And I should just move 1 pixel, but I actually moved 2. And that's because the rem accounts for only 1 pixel, and then it actually calls 1 extra move function within the code, which means I just add 1 to that. So basically, every time you would move, 1 is added to it. 1 is added to the normal value. And this has some interesting effects. Namely, it makes the physics look a bit choppier. There's a mod version of the game you can find called Celeste, which removes move jank and makes the physics similar, and it's really smooth. It makes the physics feel a bit odd, but I personally like it. And so the effect of this is that normally, while walking, you can't actually move. You only move like by 1, which means that due to move jank, you only move 2 pixels at a time. So the state of your X position being even or odd, its parity, is actually preserved. So for example, if I walk around all over here, jump around a little bit, doesn't really matter, and I check my X position, it's still even, which it was when I first spawned. As you can see, it's 16 when I first spawned. There are ways to change your parity, however, namely dashing. For example, doing an empty dash or a neutral dash will change your parity. And the reason why this changes your parity is because, I'm going to do this in a different level. The reason why this changes your parity is because, as you can see now it's odd, is because if you were to move 2 pixels in one frame, say go above 0.5 by go above it 2 times, then you would move 2 pixels in that frame, but 1 is added to it, so you move 3. Which means you're adding an odd number, which changes the state of it being even or odd. So you can see it jumps from 2 to 5 to 8 to 11, changes the parity a couple times, 14, 17, 20, 22, 25. Right here, it changes the parity for the last time, and now it stays there. So empty dashes will often change your parity, though it depends on X subpixels, as you can see. And so the effect of changing your parity is that when you first spawn, you're not actually perfectly aligned with any block. So if I were to walk up to this block but not touch it, I'm actually 1 pixel away from it, with my X to 24. However, if I were to walk actually into it, suddenly my X jumps to 25. So walking into a block or the border is another way to change your parity. And the reason why this is important to spike jumps is because if I now walk away from the block, I'm 2 pixels away from it due to parity being conserved, which is how far you need to be from spikes. So if I just walk into this thing, I don't change my parity at all. I walk into this spike, I die to it. I can't wall jump off of it. However, if I first change my parity, say by walking into the border, right there I changed it for 1 frame, as you can see, it's now odd. Now try to wall jump off of it. It's easy. And that's spike jumps. There's nothing really else to them. There's a couple of other variations, like you might remember that in Celeste, spikes only kill you if you're moving like towards them, towards the direction they face, or away from the opposite direction that they face. So sometimes you'll have things that look like spike jumps but are really just corner jumps, like for example here. It's I didn't get the boost. Like for example here, let's do this tap here. I wall jump off of it even though I'm perfectly aligned with the block. This is actually not a spike jump, this is just a corner jump, where I give myself a slight amount of speed to the left, which causes left facing spikes to not kill me, because they only kill you if you move towards them opposite the direction they face. So this is just a corner jump, not a spike jump, though it looks kind of the same. Those are pretty cool. Corner jumps are just wall jumps, by the way, if you don't know what those are pretty common in Celeste. You like wall jump while going around a corner of a block. So that's the main spike tech. Spike jumps and spike clips. Next you have landing clips. Landing clips are one of the more interesting pieces of tech, and they're one of my personal favorites. Because they look really cool. A good example of a landing clip, I think, can be found in 2800 in the current task strat, where non-jump skip, where if you haven't seen the task, whether it's awesome, I'll probably make an explanation after this. In the current task strat, right here, you fall off the block. And you can see I land on it, I regain my dashes, and I can jump actually. But I just keep falling. In fact, I don't actually lose any speed that frame, which is odd because I landed on the block, as you can see. And so what's happening here is a really interesting interaction. You can see my speed is still 2, my Y speed, even as I land on it. Though normally when I touch a block it should reset my speed because I landed on it. What's happening here is actually that there are 2 different checks that occur for landing on the ground. One of them is the on ground, I believe, check, which is in the player, which basically just checks if there's a block directly below you, and if there is one, it refreshes your dash and jump frames, jump ability. So I can jump off of this and my dashes are replenished. The other check that happens normally when you land on a block is just the simple block collision check. That one resets your speed in subpixels. However, what happens in a landing clip is that you actually land in a way that you're aligned perfectly with the block and do not actually come into contact with it, but are only directly above it for 1 frame. This is all you need for a landing clip. You don't actually need to fall off of it. Falling off of it is just one of the more visual ways of showing it. And so what in effect happens is that you land on a block with your speed and subpixels conserved for at least 1 frame. If you fall off of it, then it's conserved for a bit longer. And in this task strat, it's simply just used to set up height for some good movement, which I'm not sure I'll be able to demonstrate because I haven't tasked this in a while. Yeah, something like this. But as you can see, even if I don't fall off the block, for 1 frame I'm landing here, still with 2 speed and minus 0.43 subpixels. I can jump off of it and it's still conserved. And so landing clips have a lot of interesting applications. One of them is in 1800 in a strat that's getting more and more popular. So if there's spikes like 4 blocks above me, let's see what's the best way to demonstrate this. I'll probably just do an 800 and 1800. So if I jump to this cloud, alright, so I land on it, right? I want to spike clip here. I might try jumping and up dashing. Let's do it here. I'm not able to spike clip it because on this frame, actually, Let's be a little bit closer to it so it's easier to see. I'm not able to spike clip on it. And the reason is because the reason is pretty simple actually. Jumping and updashing does not actually have any frames during which you can spike clip on the up 4 blocks high. At least from landing. As you can see, I'm starting with 0 y subpixels on the frame that I jump. And that's a little hint. You can actually do a landing clip on this cloud for 1 frame and preserve subpixels from here. As you can see, yeah, here I landing clip. You can tell because it still shows non-zero subpixels in speed. If I buffer jump here and immediately updash, you are actually able to spike clip the block. But only if you landing clip, only if you have different subpixels on the frame of jumping. That's just one of the applications. There's a ton of other interesting ones for everything ranging from well that to other maneuvers to even in minimum dashes, where in 1300 if you get a specific setup with a jump, you can actually landing clip this block. As you can see, I still have subpixels in speed. First frame grace jump off of that is a setup for spike clipping here. So landing clips are very, very useful for a lot of things. They're one of the more interesting technical glitches, and are one of my personal favorite bits of tech. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, you can ask in the comments. I'll try to reply as soon as possible because some of these are a bit complicated. Anyway, the next one I'll look at is the soft dash. The soft dashes are pretty interesting tech. They're mostly just, they're not super useful, but they look pretty cool, and it looks like this. It's not super noticeable, but you might notice that I do a diagonal dash and I kind of curve diagonally. Instead of if I normally do a diagonal dash, I just immediately start moving diagonally. I can play that one more time. Oops. Bam. You can see I sort of have a couple frames where I'm not actually moving to the side at all before sort of accelerating to the side. And so this is a soft dash. And soft dashes, of course, do not necessarily have to occur with diagonal dashes. They can occur with any dash direction, including horizontal dashes, which are a bit less obvious. They just kind of look like empty dashes. And the reason these work is due to a mechanic called clamping. So clamping is pretty omnipresent. It's basically just you hit the border and you don't go past the border. That's literally all it is. What a soft dash is abusing a strange mechanic in the game where clamping, the function that actually puts you into the stage, is actually called after, like, the updates, the movement functions. So for example, before the game, you know, is like drawn on screen, I'm actually off stage, off the side of the game for 1 frame. Not 1 frame, for effectively 1 frame before the game clamps me out of it. So it happens that you can actually input a dash before the game clamps you in, right here. And then right here, what it does is it resets my speed, because I get clamped against the wall. So as you can see, for 1 frame, my X speed here is 0, because on this frame, the clamping was called after I did the dash, and so it resets my speed while I'm dashing, which causes the dash acceleration to kick in instead of just normal dash arc. And yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that comes from clamping and draw, and clamping being called late after everything else. But that's the main thing, is soft dashes. They're not super useful, but they're kind of fun. And you can do some other fun stuff with them, like the super soft dash, which is with clouds, where if you just like wait a little bit, then the cloud will continue to push you into the border for a couple more frames and do an even softer soft dash, where it resets your speed multiple times. So yeah, that's all the main tech I can think of. Yeah. that's most of the Celeste Classic advanced techniques and tech that you'll see in the tasks a lot. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments. I'll try to reply to them as soon as I can. And if there's any corrections I need to make, I'll just put them in the description. Keep it, and yeah, that's pretty much everything.